You're watching The Legal Breakdown. So, Glenn, we found out a few days ago that Trump was able to make bond in the New York fraud case for $175 million, but now it looks like the actual bond company may not be qualified to give him that bond. So what happened here?
Yeah, not so fast, Donald. It looks like AG Tish James may be able to begin seizing his property yet, but it's an open question. So what happened is this 80-year-old billionaire, Don Hankey is his name, head of the Hankey Group. I don't know if he has a partner named Panky, but Hanky Panky seems like it might be appropriate given what we're learning. So he is the person who is providing the bond or the surety. He's insuring the $175 million for Donald Trump. Well, turns out he's not authorized or licensed to post surety bonds in New York, right? Of course, Donald Trump is doing business with somebody who's not really authorized to engage in the kind of business he's trying to engage in. So AG James has filed what's called a notice of exception. She's lodging her disagreement or taking exception with the surety bond that's been posted, and she is requesting more information. For example, does this Hankey Group, the name of the company is technically Knight Specialty, and Don Hankey reportedly is a billionaire courtesy of, among other things, being involved in subprime loans that are given on cars at very high interest rates, and then he apparently was repossessing as many as 250 cars a day at one point. Sounds like that's how he came into a good bit of his fortune.
Yeah, in other words, the exact kind of person you would imagine Trump getting into business with.
Exactly. So AG James has requested more information. She's filed a notice of exception, and Judge Engoron has actually set a hearing on this issue on April 22nd. And it looks like at that time, Don Hankey may be required to disclose information about things like whether he has sufficient cash on hand to cover the $175 million bond that he has issued. And also, if he doesn't have the cash on hand, what kind of collateral might he be accepting from Donald Trump to secure this bond? So it sounds like come April 22nd, we're going to begin to get some more information about the nature of this bond and whether it's something that's actually acceptable to both AG James, because she's protecting the pecuniary interests of the people of New York. She wants to make sure that, the state of New York is able to collect on the judgment that was issued against Donald Trump, and whether Judge Engoron approves this bond arrangement.
Glenn, does the court have the ability to have the insurance company prove that they have the means to cover Trump if he loses the appeal?
It's a really interesting area of the law. There's not a lot of precedent on this issue. This is not the kind of thing that gets appealed and then appellate courts are resolving these kind of issues and filing opinions that become precedent that everybody can follow. But there are a lot of sort of experts in this specialty in the area of bonds that have to be posted for large money judgments in civil cases. I am not an expert in that area, Brian, but I was trying to read up and learn as much as I can. One of the experts in this field said that ordinarily, if a company is going to issue a bond, they should only issue a bond for about 10% of the surplus cash they have on hand. So the next logical question is, Don Hankey's company, how much surplus cash does it have on hand? Well, according to some of the most recent reporting, Knight Specialty, Hankey's company, has about $138 million cash on hand. I'm no mathematician, but 10% of that would be about $13 or $14 million, and yet they've issued a bond for what? $175 million. Doesn't sound like best practices to me. So yes, I think all of this will be fair game for Tish James to inquire about, for Judge Engoron to then hold this hearing, perhaps ask for sworn testimony from this Don Hankey or whoever it is that can provide information about whether this company is sufficiently solvent, sufficiently liquid that it can responsibly and appropriately issue this bond to Donald Trump.
Okay, well, I mean, first of all, if the reporting is correct and they're liquid to the tune of about $130, $140 million, then they would be staking their entire business on Donald Trump and still wouldn't be able to cover the entire cost of the bond. So if it turns out that Knight Specialty Insurance Company is not solvent enough to cover the losses if Donald Trump loses appeal, what would happen next?
Uncharted waters, but I can give it my best guess. So remember how, the appellate court just sort of gratuitously out of thin air reduced the amount that Donald Trump had to put up from $464 million, almost $500 million, to $175 million without explanation, without authority, and without analysis. I think justice is still licking its wounds from that one. And they extended by 10 days the deadline for Donald Trump to put up that paltry amount of $175 million that they reduced it to. I suspect if there is a dispute and a hearing that determines, Judge Engoron rules that no, this bond issued by Knight Specialty is not going to cut it, he would probably give Trump another 10 days, would be my best guess, to come up with another insurer, another bondsman who's willing to put up a bond appropriately that is backed by sufficient assets. And then at the end of that 10-day period, well, we are back to seeing Tish James begin to seize Donald Trump's property to satisfy the judgment.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, whether you think he's going to get the full 10 days to seek a new bond or if it's going to be kind of one strike and you're out, because he did have the ability to find a company that would be able to satisfy this bond amount. If it turns out that Knight Specialty Insurance Company isn't solvent enough to do it, then couldn't the argument be made that he's already had this opportunity to do it and he came up short?
Absolutely, but when has Donald Trump ever gotten just one strike before accountability visits him? He gets more than 3 strikes. He could be at bat for a full day, swinging away and never making contact with a dang ball. And it seems like, whether it's an unlimited number of violations of gag orders or an unlimited number of delays in his criminal cases, nobody in a position of authority ever seems to say, you're out.
Glenn, Trump has come out and claimed, based on this very court case, that he won appeal in this case and that Judge Engoron didn't accept the appeals court's ruling and that Engoron has gone rogue. Those were his exact words. Can you respond to that?
Yeah, this is Donald Trump living in his own little fictional world. There were some modifications by the appellate court of some of what Judge Engoron had done, but Judge Engoron adjusted accordingly. He didn't thumb his nose at the appellate court. That's more, keeping in line with how Donald Trump does business and how some of his lawyers seem to do business. So this is Donald Trump's fantasy world that he is forever pushing on his base, on his supporters. He's only able to fool the gullible, but he's able to fool them over and over and over again. And I think that's what these claims are a product of.
And I think what's worth pointing out to this point is that Donald Trump knows better. He knows that he hasn't won appeal, that this case isn't even going to go to a full appeal for probably another 6 months to a year. And even if he doesn't know, he presumably has lawyers that are smart enough to recognize that this case hasn't gone to appeal. But despite the fact that he knows better, he's still perpetuating this con on his own supporters because he knows he can exploit them. He knows he can fool them. That's how much contempt he has for the very people who are gullible enough, to your point, to trust the guy. And so, you think that, when Trump walks around attacking Democrats all day, that he has contempt for them. The real people he has contempt for, the people he's shown nothing but pure, unadulterated hatred for, is his own supporters, because he comes out and just manipulates them and exploits them and lies to them on a daily basis, and they just gobble it up.
Brian, in many ways, the people who suffer the most are Donald Trump's own supporters. They continue to empty their pockets, and most of them are not exactly wealthy, high-dollar donors, but, they're fooled by Donald Trump over and over and over again. The Democrats aren't sending Donald Trump money. Now, they may have to suffer under Donald Trump's policies when he was president the first time, and certainly we would all suffer mightily if he ever made his way back to the Oval Office. But, I always try to sort of retain a healthy dose of empathy for Donald Trump's supporters. I know it's hard, and, I try at every opportunity to talk across that divide, as frustrating as it can be, because these are some of the people who are suffering the most. Their lives are not being made appreciably better by any Trump policy, and yet they're also, on top of that, emptying their pockets and sending him $5, $10, $20 over and over and over again. And according to the reporting, they are inundated with emails and text messages saying, give me more, give me more, give me more. And they often respond by giving him more. In America, I've always said it's not us and them when it comes to Americans. It's just us, different kinds of us, different flavors of us, people with different priorities and ideologies, but still, it's all us. And I think we have to get back to trying to treat everybody, understanding how everybody is suffering. The people who really care about the rule of law and allegiance to the Constitution and accountability are suffering. And the people who don't care about that so much are still suffering at the hands of Donald Trump. So hopefully come November, we can, pull ourselves out of this morass, this quagmire that Donald Trump and the Republicans have put us in, and make life a little bit better for everybody, including the people who are perhaps suffering most at the hands of Donald Trump.
And, he's a particularly insidious creature when it comes to being able to exploit those very people. I mean, his entire life has basically been just a monument to being able to screw people who believe him, who are gullible enough to believe him. I mean, you look at everything from Trump wine, Trump casinos, Trump water, Trump steaks, Trump vodka. Trump University was a fraud. I mean, now you have these NFTs, these shoes, Trump media, which right now is just on a downward descent. And so he uses his platform, he uses his words, he uses his charisma to try to get these people, people again who he's conned into believing him, to hand over their money, and he does it on a constant basis. And at the end of the day, they're the ones that are being screwed. I mean, he's the one who presented himself as a fake populist here. And what did he do? What was his only major legislative accomplishment when he was in office? It was a tax cut for millionaires and billionaires. That's what he did. He came out and said that he wanted to help, he said his exact quote was he wants to be greedy for the country. He's rich, and so now he used to be greedy for himself, now he wants to be greedy for everybody else. At the end of the day, what did he do? He was greedy for the very people who donated to his campaign and nobody else. And the way that that tax cut didn't actually help the middle class is that just before midterms, as a little carrot to dangle, he told them, okay, well, if Republicans maintain control of Congress, then we'll pass a middle class tax cut. And so if middle class Americans had already benefited from the initial tax cut that he passed, why would we need a middle class tax cut? If Americans had already benefited from a health care plan that he had put forward, why would we need a health care plan that he was promising? If Americans had already benefited from some infrastructure package, why would he need to promise that stuff? He never actually went through with any of it. It was all just carrots that he was dangling for people that were gullible enough to believe him.
Yeah, we should never lose sight that it is his base and his supporters who suffer as much and in some ways more than the rest of us. And he has made their lives no better, but what he gives them is he says, your life may suck, but at least you're not black. At least you're not an immigrant. At least you're not gay. Those people, immigrants he's now taken to calling animals, those people are so beneath you that you should feel better about yourself because you're not them. He gives them permission, encouragement even, to hate the other. And for some people, that at least gives them some status in the eyes of Donald Trump. At least I'm not those people. All the while, Donald Trump is picking their damn pockets.
Right. I mean, that was perfectly put. I think as long as he makes sure to train their ire on the other people, to your exact point, people of color, gay people, immigrants, trans people, whatever it is, anybody who he can punch down on, as long as he can train those people's ire, whether it's financial insecurity, whatever it is, if he can focus them on somebody else, some other group, and make them the root of all of their problems, then he's happy. And then those people aren't training their attention on the true problem, which is people like Donald Trump who use their positions of power to prey on those who are weaker than them. And so I think that's what we're seeing right here. So with that said, we'll, of course, stay on top of whatever happens with Donald Trump's prosecutions as they move forward, including whatever happens with this surety bond and whether or not it's accepted as part of the New York fraud case that's happening right now. So with that said, Glenn and I will continue to cover this stuff. If you want to follow along, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on the screen. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.